The steak had gone cold almost an hour ago. I sat alone at the dining table, staring at two plates that looked like they belonged in a restaurant advertisement. Candles, wine, flowers, everything Victoria loved, everything she wasn't here to see. My phone rested beside my hand. Dark, silent, empty. I checked the time again. 9:17 p.m. 3 hours late. Not even a message. Not even a single excuse. The knot in my stomach tightened. I picked up my phone and opened our chat. The last message was mine. Happy anniversary. Don't work too late tonight. I have a surprise waiting. Sent 8 hours ago. Read. No reply. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the apartment around me. The place looked perfect. Victoria always liked things perfect. Perfect furniture. Perfect view. Perfect image. Perfect career. Everything polished. Everything expensive. Everything except us. The thought made me laugh. A small laugh. The kind that sounded more tired than amused. 5 years ago, this night would have been different. 5 years ago, Victoria would have rushed home before sunset. She would have brought flowers. She would have dragged me onto the balcony and made me watch the city lights with her. Back then, she used to hold my hand whenever she got excited. Back then, she used to look at me like I mattered. A sharp vibration interrupted the memory. My heart jumped. Finally, I grabbed the phone. A marketing email. Nothing from Victoria. The disappointment hit harder than it should have. Maybe because deep down, I already knew. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a busy day. This was simply another item on a long list. Another promise pushed aside. Another moment sacrificed. Another reminder that my place in her life kept getting smaller. I stood and walked toward the living room window. The city glowed beneath the night sky. Somewhere out there, my wife was celebrating something more important than me. The ugly thought refused to leave. A year ago, I would have defended her. She's under pressure. She's building something big. She doesn't mean it. Now, those excuses felt old, like shoes worn through at the bottom. My phone lit up again. This time, it was Daniel, my older brother. The message appeared on screen. Still waiting? I stared at it for several seconds. Then I typed back. Yeah. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then another message. Come on, Ethan. It's your anniversary. I knew what he wanted to say. He'd been trying to say it for months. Maybe years. I put the phone down without answering. Because I didn't want to hear it. Because hearing the truth and accepting it were different things. The apartment felt too quiet. The clock on the wall sounded louder every minute. Tick, tick, tick. I returned to the table and adjusted the flowers. Pointless, but at least it gave my hand something to do. At 10:02 p.m., I finally called Victoria. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Voicemail. I hung up. A minute later, I tried again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. My jaw clenched. Then came the text. In a meeting. Talk later. I stared at the screen. A meeting. At 10 o'clock. On our anniversary. The message felt like a slap. No apology. No explanation. Just 3 words. I typed several responses. Deleted them. Typed another. Deleted that too. Eventually I put the phone face down. The food continued getting colder. By 11, the candles had nearly burned out. The room smelled like melted wax and disappointment. I switched on the television just to break the silence. Business news filled the screen. Stock prices, market updates, corporate interviews, the usual. Then a familiar face appeared. Victoria, my wife. The camera followed her through a crowded ballroom. People applauded around her. Champagne glasses lifted into the air. A banner behind her displayed the company logo. The anchor smiled. Victoria Hayes celebrates her company's biggest acquisition this year. My stomach dropped. A celebration. Not a meeting. A celebration. I grabbed the remote and turned up the volume. Victoria stood at the center of the crowd. Elegant. Confident. Beautiful. Exactly the woman the city admired. Ryan Cole stood beside her. His arm rested casually near her back. Too comfortable. Too familiar. The crowd laughed. Victoria laughed too. The sound reached me through the television. For some reason, that hurt the most. Because I couldn't remember the last time she laughed like that with me. The segment ended after a minute. I sat frozen. The room suddenly felt colder than the dinner. A notification appeared on my phone. Social media. The same event. Dozens of photos. Executives smiling. Investors celebrating. Victoria in every frame. Ryan beside her in most of them. I scrolled slowly. Try not to think. Trying not to compare. Try not to notice how alive she looked. Then I reached one photo. My thumb stopped moving. Victoria stood beside Ryan near the stage. Both of them smiling. Not polite smiles. Not professional smiles. Real smiles. The kind that reached the eyes. The kind I hadn't seen directed at me in years. The air left my lungs. I locked the screen immediately. But the image stayed in my head. Midnight arrived. Then 12:30. Finally, the apartment door opened. The sound echoed through the hallway. Victoria stepped inside, carrying her designer handbag. She looked exhausted, yet somehow energized at the same time, like someone returning from a successful adventure, not someone returning to her husband. Her eyes landed on the table. The candles, the flowers, the untouched food. A brief pause. Then she exhaled. Ethan, no excitement, no guilt, just irritation. I stood slowly. You remembered. Victoria removed her coat. Don't do this tonight. A bitter laugh escaped me. Tonight, she placed the coat over a chair. I had a huge deal to close. Our anniversary. I know, the answer came too fast, too smooth, like she'd already rehearsed it. My heartbeat quickened. You knew. Victoria rubbed her forehead. Of course I knew. The room went still. I stared at her, waiting, hoping she would explain. Instead, she walked toward the kitchen. I couldn't leave. Those 4 words hit harder than any apology could have helped, because they revealed the truth. She hadn't forgotten. She chose. The realization settled over me like cold rain. She knew exactly what day it was. She knew I was waiting. She knew what it meant. And she stayed anyway. Victoria opened the refrigerator. Can we talk about this tomorrow? I couldn't answer immediately. My throat felt tight. Tomorrow. There was always tomorrow. Tomorrow dinner. Tomorrow vacation. Tomorrow date night. Tomorrow us. Until years passed. Until everything important became tomorrow. The refrigerator door closed. Victoria finally looked at me. A flicker of annoyance crossed her face. What? I shook my head. Nothing dramatic. Nothing loud. Just a small movement. Because something inside me had shifted. Not broken. Shifted. Like a crack spreading through glass. Without another word, I turned away. The dishes waited on the table. The flowers were beginning to wilt. The candles had died completely. One by one, I started cleaning. Victoria disappeared into the bedroom. No apology followed. No attempt to stop me. Only distance. The same distance that had been growing for years. I carried the plates into the kitchen. Opened my phone again. And there it was. That photo. Victoria and Ryan. Smiling. Happy. Connected. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Then a thought slipped into my mind. Quiet. Terrifying. Impossible to ignore. Maybe I wasn't losing my wife. Maybe I had already lost her. Maybe I was no longer her husband. Maybe I was only a habit she hadn't removed yet. 3 days passed after our anniversary. 3 days of polite conversations. 3 days of pretending nothing had happened. 3 days of waking up beside my wife and feeling farther away from her than ever. The strange part wasn't the distance. It was how normal it had become. Victoria sat across from me one morning, scrolling through emails while drinking coffee. I pushed a plate toward her. You should eat something. A quick glance. I'm not hungry. The phone vibrated. She grabbed it instantly. Her expression changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. A small smile. A little spark. Then it disappeared. Back to business mode. Back to cold. Back to controlled. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. Good news. The message. Oh. She slipped the phone into her purse. Just work. Work. Everything was work. Every late night. Every canceled dinner. Every missed weekend. Every broken promise. Work had become the answer to everything. The problem was that I no longer believed it. That afternoon, I sent her another message. Movie tonight? Read. No reply. An hour later. We haven't spent time together in weeks. Read. Nothing. At 6 o'clock. Can we just have dinner together? Read. Nothing. Around 8, her assistant called. Victoria wouldn't be coming home. Another business dinner. Another emergency. Another opportunity. I stared at the city lights through my office window and laughed quietly. Not because anything was funny, because disappointment was becoming predictable. A week later, the company hosted a major networking event. Victoria wanted me there, not as her husband, as part of the image. The successful CEO, the supportive husband, the perfect couple. The invitation sat on my desk for 2 days before I finally agreed. Maybe I was still trying to save something. Maybe I was still hoping. The ballroom was packed. Business leaders, investors, journalists, people chasing success. Victoria stood near the stage, surrounded by executives, including Ryan. Of course, he was always there, talking, laughing, standing close enough to make me uncomfortable. When she noticed me, she waved. The gesture felt automatic, like greeting a coworker, not a husband. I spent most of the evening alone, shaking hands, making conversation, watching. Every time I saw Victoria, Ryan seemed to be beside her. At one point, they were standing near the bar. Their heads leaned close together, sharing something private. Victoria laughed. Ryan touched her shoulder. The movement lasted less than a second. Still, something twisted inside me. I turned away. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe Daniel was right. Maybe I was refusing to see reality. A few minutes later, Victoria stepped onto the stage for a speech. Applause echoed through the room. Phones came out. Cameras flashed. Everyone focused on her, including Ryan. While she spoke, my own phone buzzed. Daniel, how's the perfect marriage? I nearly smiled. Don't start. The response arrived instantly. Then stop lying to yourself. I shoved the phone into my pocket. The words stayed with me. Later that evening, I went looking for the restroom. A hallway near the executive offices was mostly empty, quiet, away from the crowd. As I passed one of the conference rooms, I noticed a familiar phone sitting on a table. Victoria's. She must have left it behind. The screen lit up. Just for a second, a notification appeared. Ryan, I should have kept walking. I know that. I still remember standing there, arguing with myself. Then another notification appeared, and everything changed. Ryan, you don't need to explain yourself to Ethan anymore. My stomach dropped. The screen remained unlocked. The message thread was open. I stepped closer. Every instinct told me to stop. Instead, I read, Ryan, he's holding you back. Ryan, you deserve people who understand your ambition. Ryan, every time you choose yourself, he makes you feel guilty. My pulse pounded in my ears. I kept scrolling. Victoria's responses appeared between the messages. Long responses, honest responses, personal responses, things she never told me. Sometimes I feel exhausted going home. He doesn't understand how much pressure I'm under. I don't know how to make him accept that my career comes first right now. Each sentence felt like another crack spreading through glass. The worst part wasn't Ryan. The worst part was her honesty. Not with me, with him. Months of conversations filled the screen. Months. Whenever we fought, whenever she felt stressed, whenever she felt lonely. Ryan knew. Ryan listened. Ryan comforted her. While I sat at home, wondering why my wife wouldn't talk to me, a message near the bottom froze me completely. Victoria, I can't tell Ethan these things. He'll take it personally. Ryan, then don't. Some people can't handle the truth. The room blurred for a moment. My hands clenched. I wasn't reading about a business partnership. I was reading about emotional intimacy, trust, connection, everything missing from my marriage. A voice echoed down the hallway. I quickly stepped back. Victoria appeared around the corner. Her smile vanished when she saw me near the phone. The color drained from her face. For one brief moment, she looked guilty. Then the walls came back up. What are you doing here? I picked up the phone. You left this. She took it immediately. Too quickly. Too carefully. Neither of us moved. The tension stretched between us. Finally, I spoke. Ryan knows more about our marriage than I do. Her expression hardened. Ethan, no. The word came out sharper than I expected. You talked to him about everything. It isn't what you think. A nervous laugh escaped me. I hate that sentence. People only use it when it's exactly what someone thinks. Victoria folded her arms. Ryan is a friend. A friend. The question hung in the air. He knows when you're scared. No response. He knows when you're frustrated. Still nothing. He knows when you're unhappy. Victoria exhaled slowly. You read private messages. And you shared private parts of our marriage. The muscles in her jaw tightened. We were discussing work-life balance. I stared at her, then laughed again. This time, there was no humor in it. That's what we're calling it. Her eyes narrowed. You're overreacting. There it was. The familiar shift. The moment everything became my fault. Every argument followed the same road. She hurt me. I confronted her. She explained. Then somehow I apologized. Not this time. You told him things you've never told me. You wouldn't understand. The words landed like a punch. For several seconds, I couldn't speak. You don't even hear yourself anymore. Victoria looked away toward the ballroom, toward the crowd, toward anything except me. This is exactly why I didn't want to discuss it. Because I'd be hurt. Because you'd make emotional. I stared at her, completely stunned. We're talking about our marriage. Her silence answered for her. To Victoria, emotions had become obstacles, problems, weaknesses, things to manage, not things to share, not things to protect. Something inside me finally grew tired, not angry, tired of chasing, tired of explaining, tired of competing with her priorities. A slow breath left my lungs. You know what's funny? Victoria remained quiet. I've spent years trying to become someone important enough for you to choose. The words came easier now. Better husband, better listener, better supporter. Ethan, but Ryan didn't take my place. Her eyes lifted. I shook my head. You handed it to him. The impact showed immediately. A tiny crack in the armor. Then it disappeared. The Ice Queen returned. Cold, controlled, untouchable. If you're done, I need to get back. Back to work. Back to Ryan. Back to everything except us. I stepped aside. Go ahead. For a moment, she seemed surprised. Almost disappointed. Maybe she expected another argument. Another apology. Another attempt to fix things. Instead, I simply walked away. The power shifted in that hallway. Not dramatically. Not visibly. But I felt it. The man chasing her had stopped running. That night, I sat alone in our bedroom. My phone rested in my hands. Months of messages filled the screen. Dinner invitations, weekend trips, simple questions, requests to spend time together. Most were marked read, many unanswered. A chain of tiny rejections stretching back farther than I wanted to admit. I stared at them for a long time, then opened a folder on my laptop. Architectural designs, projects, dreams, opportunities one had postponed, opportunities one had sacrificed. The future suddenly seemed bigger than this apartment, bigger than this marriage. The bedroom door opened after midnight. Victoria entered quietly. Neither of us spoke. She changed clothes, checked emails, prepared for another day. Like nothing had happened. Like the crack between us wasn't becoming a canyon. When she finally fell asleep, I sat on the edge of the bed. My wedding ring reflected the soft light from the lamp. 5 years. One small piece of metal. One promise. One relationship I was carrying alone. Slowly, I removed it. The skin beneath felt strangely light. The ring rested on the nightstand. Beside the lamp. Beside the future I could no longer ignore. The next morning, Victoria walked past it, grabbed her phone, checked her schedule, finished her coffee, and left for work. She never noticed it was gone. The email sat open on my laptop. I had read it at least 20 times. Maybe more. The offer was real. A major architectural firm in Chicago wanted me to lead one of the biggest projects of my career. A project I would have accepted immediately years ago. Before marriage. Before sacrifice became routine. Before every decision started revolving around Victoria's schedule. My finger hovered over the keyboard. Accept. One click. That was all. Yet somehow it felt bigger than signing a contract. It felt like choosing between the man I used to be and the man I had become. The front door opened. Victoria walked into the apartment, talking through a wireless headset. Move the meeting to Thursday. Her heels clicked across the floor. No, I don't care if they're unhappy. She headed straight toward the office. I'm tired of repeating myself. The office door closed. The conversation continued behind it. Not once did she ask how my day had been. Not once did she notice the email glowing on my screen. The decision suddenly became easier. I clicked accept. A confirmation message appeared seconds later. Welcome aboard. A strange calm settled over me. Not excitement. Not happiness. Something steadier. Like finally putting down a weight I had carried too long. 3 days later, Daniel sat across from me at a small sports bar. A basketball game played silently on the television above us. Neither of us was watching. He studied me over the rim of his glass. "So you actually did it?" "I did." His eyebrows lifted. "Chicago. Chicago." A slow grin spread across his face. "Took you long enough." I laughed. "That's your congratulations?" "My congratulations is not punching you for waiting this many years." The waitress dropped off another basket of fries. Daniel pointed one at me. "You know how many opportunities you've turned down?" I stopped counting. "Exactly." He shook his head. "You built your entire life around Victoria." The words stung because they were true. I loved her. "You still do." The correction came instantly. I stared at the table. Daniel leaned back. "Loving someone isn't supposed to erase you." The sentence stayed with me long after lunch ended. A few days later, I met Emma for coffee. She had been one of my closest friends before life got busy, before marriage became my entire world. She smiled the second she saw me. "There he is." I sat down. "Ooh, the guy who used to have dreams." That earned a laugh. The first genuine laugh I'd had in weeks. Emma stirred her coffee. "When was the last time you worked on something because you wanted to?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Her expression softened. "That's what I thought." The conversation drifted toward architecture, design, creativity, projects, passions, topics I hadn't discussed in years. By the time we left the cafe, something felt different. Not fixed, awakened. Like a forgotten part of me had finally stretched after being asleep too long. Victoria didn't react much when I told her about Chicago. At least not immediately. She stood in the kitchen, scrolling through emails. "I'm accepting the offer." A few seconds passed, then another. Finally, she glanced up. "What offer?" "The Chicago project." "Oh." Back to the phone. "That's nice. That's nice." I almost laughed. Years ago, I would have spent weeks preparing for that conversation, worrying about timing, worrying about her reaction. Now she barely looked up. "When do you leave?" "Next month." A brief nod. "Okay." Then she returned to her screen. The conversation ended there. At least for her. For me, it felt like closing a chapter. The changes started small. I stopped rearranging my schedule around hers. Stopped canceling plans whenever she called. Stopped waiting. One evening my phone buzzed while Emma and I were reviewing design sketches. "Victoria." The name flashed across the screen. I let it ring. A minute later another call came. Then a text. "Need you at a dinner with investors." I stared at the message. Normally I would have rushed home. Apologized. Changed everything. Instead, I typed one sentence. "I already have plans." The reply arrived instantly. "Cancel them." I read it twice, then locked my phone. Emma raised an eyebrow. "Everything okay?" A smile pulled at the corner of my mouth. "Actually, yeah." For once it was. The next few weeks brought unexpected changes. Not only in my life, in Victoria's too. The first signs appeared during breakfast. She walked into the kitchen carrying a tablet. Annoyance was written all over her face. Ryan approved a contract without consulting me. I glanced up from my coffee. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Usually I would have asked questions, offered advice, tried helping. Now I simply returned to reading. Victoria stood there for several seconds, waiting. When nothing came, she looked almost confused. The next morning it happened again. Another complaint, another problem, another story involving Ryan. This time she paced across the apartment. "He keeps pushing decisions through too quickly." I nodded. "Sounds frustrating." "That's it." I folded the newspaper. "What do you want me to say?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. For years, she had ignored my concerns. Now she wanted my attention. The irony wasn't lost on me. A week later, the real problem surfaced. Victoria arrived home looking exhausted. Not tired. Shaken. A stack of documents landed on the dining table. I glanced over. Financial reports. Contracts. Emails. Her fingers pressed against her temples. Ryan hid information from the board. My eyes moved to her. She continued sorting papers. He redirected resources toward projects that benefited him. The anger in her voice sounded genuine. Not business frustration. Personal betrayal. Something clicked. Ryan wasn't just making mistakes. He was using her, the same way he had used her trust. the same way he had positioned himself between us. Victoria sank into a chair. For once she looked vulnerable, human, lost. The sight stirred something inside me. Pity, maybe sadness, but not enough to change course. Because while Ryan's betrayal was new to her, mine wasn't. I had lived with neglect for years. Days passed. The investigation inside her company grew larger. Board members became involved. Questions spread. Pressure increased. Victoria spent longer hours at work. Yet something else changed. She started calling more often, texting more often, trying more often. One night my phone buzzed while I was reviewing blueprints. Victoria. I answered. Everything okay? A pause greeted me. Then her voice. Where are you? Working. Another pause. When will you be home? I checked the clock. Late. The irony almost made me smile. Years ago, those exact conversations had happened in reverse. This time she was the one waiting. She was the one being left behind. The realization seemed to hit her too. The silence stretched. Finally. Okay. The call ended. No argument. No demands. Just disappointment. The same disappointment I had swallowed for years. The night before my departure arrived faster than expected. A large suitcase stood beside the bedroom door. Packed. Ready. Real. Victoria entered the room and stopped. Her eyes landed on it immediately. The suitcase seemed to suck all the air from the room. Neither of us spoke. She walked closer, slowly, as if approaching something dangerous. You're really leaving. Not a question. A realization. I zipped the final pocket. Yes. She stood motionless. The confident CEO was gone. No commands. No cold answers. No perfect control. Just uncertainty. Her gaze moved around the room. The photos. The furniture. The life we built together. Then back to the suitcase. Something shifted behind her eyes. Fear. The same fear I had carried every day for months. Maybe years. The fear of losing someone. She took another step forward. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. Ethan. My hand rested on the suitcase handle. For years, I had waited for her to fight for us. Waited for her to choose us. Waited for her to notice what was slipping away. Now, she finally did. Too late. Her lips parted. The words seemed difficult for her. Painful. Heavy. Don't go. The room fell still. I stared at her. At the woman I had loved enough to sacrifice pieces of myself. At the woman who was only now realizing what those sacrifices cost. For years, I had dreamed of hearing those words. Now I wasn't sure they mattered anymore. The first morning in Chicago felt strange. Not because the city was unfamiliar. Not because the apartment was empty. Because nobody needed anything from me. No last-minute calls. No investor dinners. No waiting for a wife who might never come home. Just me. My work. My future. Sunlight spilled through the apartment windows as I stood with a cup of coffee in my hand. Below me, the city was already awake. Cars moved through busy streets. People hurried toward offices. Life continued. And somehow, so did I. Months earlier, I would have spent that morning wondering what Victoria was doing. Whether she missed me. Whether she cared. Now, my attention stayed on the blueprints spread across the kitchen table. The project was demanding. Complicated. Exactly the kind of challenge I used to love. The kind I had abandoned without realizing it. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Big presentation today. Yeah, you're gonna crush it. A smile appeared. Thanks. A second message followed. Don't forget who you are this time. The word stayed with me all day. Because that was the real victory. Not the promotion. Not the salary. Remembering who I was. The presentation exceeded every expectation. By afternoon, the entire leadership team wanted me involved in future projects. People listened when I spoke. My ideas mattered. My work mattered. Walking out of the conference room, I realized something painful. I had spent years starving for respect. Not from strangers. From the person I loved most. The elevator doors opened. My phone vibrated again. Victoria. The screen glowed in my hand. 3 missed calls. 1 voicemail. I listened while walking toward my office. Ethan. Her voice sounded tired. Not physically tired. Defeated. I know you're busy. A pause followed. I just wanted to hear your voice. The message ended there. No demands. No instructions. No complaints. Just loneliness. The same loneliness I had tried explaining to her for years. That evening, Daniel called. His laughter greeted me immediately. You picked a great time to leave. I sat on my apartment balcony. What happened now? The Ryan disaster. My grip tightened around the phone. What disaster? Daniel whistled softly. You haven't heard? No. Turn on the news. 10 minutes later, I understood. Ryan's financial decisions had exploded into a public scandal. Unauthorized contracts, hidden investments, conflicts of interest. The board had launched an investigation. Investors were furious. Reporters were everywhere. And Victoria's company was taking the hit. I stared at the television. Ryan appeared, leaving corporate headquarters. Surrounded by cameras. Surrounded by questions. Surrounded by consequences. Then Victoria appeared. She looked exhausted. The confident CEO from a year ago was gone. The pressure showed everywhere. Daniel's voice returned through the phone. Funny, isn't it? What? He convinced her everyone else was the problem. I didn't answer, because there was nothing funny about it. Only sad. 2 weeks later, Victoria called again. This time I answered. The connection remained quiet for several seconds. Then, can we talk? The request sounded fragile. About what? A soft breath reached the speaker. Everything. I leaned back in my chair. The city lights shimmered beyond the window. Months ago, I would have jumped at that opportunity. Now uncertainty replaced hope. Okay. Another pause. Then, I was wrong about Ryan. The confession came without excuses, without defenses, without blame. Just truth. I waited. He manipulated information. Her voice shook slightly. He pushed people out whenever they disagreed with him. The next words came slower. And he wanted you gone. That caught my attention. What do you mean? More silence. Then, he told me you were holding me back. My jaw tightened. He kept saying you didn't understand ambition. The conversation from that hallway flashed through my mind. Every message, every doubt, every crack. Victoria continued. He knew you questioned him. He knew I trusted you. A bitter laugh escaped me. Could have fooled me. The comment landed heavily. She didn't argue, didn't defend herself, because she couldn't. Not anymore. I know. The pain in her voice sounded real. I know. The following weekend, I returned home for legal meetings. Not because I wanted to, because reality demanded it. The apartment felt different. Smaller somehow. Colder. The moment I walked inside, something caught my eye. The wedding photo. Gone. For years, it had hung above the fireplace. Now only an empty space remained. A pale rectangle marked where it once belonged. My eyes lingered there. Victoria noticed. I took it down. I nodded slowly. Neither of us mentioned why. We didn't need to. The answer stood between us. The photo no longer reflected reality. The separation process began quietly. No screaming. No dramatic scenes. Just paperwork. Meetings. Signatures. The slow dismantling of a life built together. One afternoon, we met with attorneys. Stacks of documents covered the table. Victoria looked exhausted. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Every minute felt longer. By the time it ended, neither of us had much energy left. Outside the office building, she stopped me. Ethan. I turned. The city traffic moved behind us. People hurried past. Nobody noticed 2 lives falling apart. Victoria wrapped her arms around herself, like she was trying to stay warm. I understand now. I waited. The words seemed difficult for her. Not all betrayal looks the same. The sentence surprised me. She stared toward the street. I kept telling myself I never cheated. A weak laugh escaped her, as if that made everything okay. The wind tugged at her hair. When you needed me. Her voice cracked slightly. I chose work. Another pause. I chose status. The next words barely rose above a whisper. I chose everyone except you. The honesty hurt more than excuses ever could, because she finally saw it. Everything. The dinners. The missed anniversaries. The unread messages. The loneliness. All of it. Years too late. That night, I couldn't sleep. My hotel room remained dark except for city lights filtering through the curtains. Forgiveness. The word kept circling my mind. Could I forgive her? Maybe. The harder question was different. Could I go back? Every time I imagined returning, I remembered the cold dinner table, the unanswered texts, the feeling of becoming invisible inside my own marriage. Love had survived those things. Trust hadn't. A week later came the final separation meeting, the last signatures, the last discussions, the last chapter. Victoria arrived early. I found her sitting alone inside the conference room. No lawyers, no assistants, no distractions, just us. A small box rested on the table. My eyes moved toward it. Victoria pushed it forward. Slowly, carefully, I opened it. Inside sat my wedding ring. The same ring I had left behind months ago. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The sight stirred old memories. Wedding vows, promises, dreams, an entire future that no longer existed. Victoria's hands trembled slightly. The movement was small, but impossible to miss. There was something I never told you. My attention shifted toward her. The expression on her face looked unfamiliar. Not cold, not guarded, vulnerable. A deep breath entered her lungs. Then she reached in her purse. Several documents appeared. Old documents. Years old. She placed them on the table between us. I frowned. What is this? Her eyes lowered. When we were first married. Another pause. Longer this time. An emotion I couldn't identify flickered across her face. There was an investor. I stayed silent. He wanted your firm to remove you from a major project. Confusion spread through me. What? Victoria swallowed hard. I never told you because I didn't want you worrying about it. My heart began beating faster. She slid one of the papers toward me. I recognized the names immediately. The project, the investor, the year, everything. Victoria's voice softened. He threatened to blacklist you. The room suddenly felt very still. I stopped it. I stared at her, unable to speak. For years, I believed that project survived on its own. For years, I never knew. Victoria looked down at her hands. I used my connections. A sad smile appeared. I spent months fighting for you. The words settled over me like a storm. Everything changed in that moment. Not the past, not the damage, but my understanding of it. Because the woman sitting across from me had loved me once. Deeply. Enough to protect my future without ever taking credit. The realization hit harder than I expected. Victoria finally lifted her eyes. Pain, regret, loss, all visible now. Nothing hidden, nothing protected. I never stopped loving you, Ethan. A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. The room remained quiet. My wedding ring sat between us. The truth sat between us. And suddenly, nothing felt as simple as it had a minute earlier. The wedding ring remained between us. Neither of us touched it. The conference room felt smaller than before. Not because the walls had moved, because the truth had. For months, I had viewed Victoria through one lens. The woman who neglected me. The woman who chose work over love. The woman who watched our marriage die without trying to save it. Now another truth stood beside those memories. Years ago, she had protected my future. Not for attention, not for praise. Because she loved me. The realization hurt in a different way. It would have been easier if she had never cared. Easier if the entire marriage had been a lie. But it wasn't. That was the tragedy. We had started with love. Real love. Somewhere along the way, ambition buried it. Victoria stared at the table. Her eyes looked exhausted. Not from lack of sleep. From carrying regret. I should have told you. The words barely rose above a whisper. I nodded slowly. Why didn't you? A sad smile appeared. Because back then I didn't need credit. Her fingers brushed the edge of the document. I just wanted you to succeed. The answer felt genuine. That made it harder. A lot harder. For several moments, neither of us spoke. The memories came one after another. Our wedding. Our first apartment. Late-night takeout dinners. Dreams we shared. Plans we made. A younger version of us. A happier version. Then came the promotions. The business trips. The missed anniversaries. The unanswered messages. The distance. Two truths existed at the same time. She had loved me. She had hurt me. Both were real. Victoria finally lifted her head. Do you hate me? The question hung between us. I thought carefully before answering. No. The relief in her eyes appeared for only a second. Then I continued. But I can't pretend nothing happened. Her shoulders lowered slightly, as if she already knew. Maybe she did. The meeting ended shortly afterward. No dramatic goodbye. No desperate promises. Just two people standing at the edge of something that could not be rebuilt. Not because rebuilding was impossible. Because the foundation no longer existed. Before leaving, I picked up the ring box. Victoria noticed. Her gaze followed the movement. I closed the lid and slipped it into my pocket. Not as a promise. Not as hope. As a memory. Then I walked out. Weeks passed. Then months. Life kept moving. Project after project arrived. My reputation grew. My confidence grew with it. People sought my advice. My designs appeared in industry magazines. For the first time in years, I wasn't introducing myself as someone's husband. I was introducing myself as myself. One afternoon, Emma joined me for lunch. The restaurant overlooked the river. Boats drifted across the water below. She studied me carefully. You look different. Older. A laugh escaped her. No. She leaned forward. You look present. The comment surprised me. Emma smiled. A year ago, you were always somewhere else. I frowned. What does that mean? You were physically in the room. Her coffee cup rotated slowly between her hands. But emotionally, she shook her head. You spent every second worrying about Victoria. The truth landed softly. Not painful anymore. Just honest. And now, a grin appeared. Now you actually show up. The conversation stayed with me long after lunch ended. Because she was right. I had spent years living around someone else's life. Now I was finally living my own. A month later came the biggest moment of my career. An international architecture conference. Industry leaders. Major investors. Media coverage. Hundreds of professionals gathered inside a massive auditorium. My project had been selected for a prestigious award. Standing backstage, I adjusted my tie and tried to calm my nerves. The event coordinator approached. 5 minutes. I nodded. My hands felt steadier than expected. Not because I wasn't nervous. Because I knew I belonged there. The old version of me would have questioned everything. The new version had earned his place. The ceremony began. Names were announced. Awards presented. Applause echoed throughout the auditorium. Then my category arrived. The giant screen displayed images of my project. My work. My vision. Years of sacrifice transformed into something real. The presenter opened the envelope. A few seconds later, my name filled the room. The applause sounded distant at first, then louder, stronger. I walked toward the stage. Heart pounding, lights shining, people standing. For a brief moment, I scanned the audience and saw her, Victoria, sitting alone, near the back. Her eyes never left me. The sight stopped me for half a second. Not because I expected her there, because I suddenly understood why she came. She wasn't there to reclaim me. She wasn't there to interrupt my future. She was there to witness it, to see the man I became, the man she once believed in, the man she later neglected. The applause continued. I accepted the award, thanked my team, thanked the people who supported me, then stepped away from the microphone. No revenge speech, no public humiliation, no dramatic moment. None of that mattered anymore. When the ceremony ended, people gathered around me. Congratulations. Photos. Interviews. Questions. By the time the crowd thinned, the auditorium was nearly empty. Victoria remained near the exit. Waiting. Not approaching. Just waiting. I walked over. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. She glanced toward the stage. Then back at me. A faint smile appeared. You did it. 3 simple words. No bitterness. No manipulation. Just pride. The kind of pride she should have shared years ago. I nodded. So did you. Confusion crossed her face. What? You helped create this version of me. The emotion in her eyes shifted immediately. Pain, gratitude, regret, all mixed together. Victoria lowered her gaze. The next words came slowly. I spent a long time thinking success would fix everything. I stayed quiet. It turns out success can't replace people. The auditorium lights dimmed one row at a time. Workers moved through the aisles. The night was ending. So was this chapter. Victoria reached into her purse. A familiar box appeared. The ring box. She held it out. My wedding ring rested inside. The final return. The final goodbye. I took it. The metal felt cool against my palm. Years of memories contained inside one small circle. Victoria watched me carefully. No expectations, no demands, no pressure, just acceptance. That hurt more than pleading ever could, because she finally understood. Some losses cannot be repaired. Not because forgiveness is impossible, because timing matters. Love needs attention, respect, presence. When those things disappear long enough, love eventually follows. A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't hide it. Neither of us pretended not to see it. Then she smiled. A small smile. A sad smile. The kind that appears when someone finally accepts reality. Goodbye, Ethan. I nodded. Goodbye, Victoria. She turned and walked away. No dramatic scene followed. No last-minute confession. No miracle. Just consequences. The most honest ending we could have had. 6 months later, I stood inside my new apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Chicago skyline. The setting sun painted the buildings gold. A project model rested on my desk. Award plaques lined one shelf. Blueprints covered another. The space felt lived in. Earned. Mine. My phone vibrated. One new message. Victoria. The name remained on my screen. For a moment, old memories surfaced. The anniversary dinner. The wedding. The heartbreak. The love. Everything. I opened the message preview. Only one sentence appeared. I hope you're happy. Nothing more. No request. No apology. No attempt to reopen old wounds. Just a simple wish. My thumb hovered above the screen, then stopped. The message remained unread. Not because I hated her. Not because I wanted revenge. Because some chapters deserve to stay closed. Slowly, I opened my contacts. Victoria's name appeared. A final reminder of the life behind me. One tap. A confirmation screen appeared. Delete contact. I stared at it. Then pressed yes. The name disappeared. Gone. Not out of anger. Not out of punishment. Because I finally chose myself. The phone settled onto the desk. Outside the window, the sun continued sinking toward the horizon. The city glowed beneath the evening sky. A future waited ahead. The pain wasn't gone completely. Maybe it never would be. Some scars remain. But scars are different from wounds. Scars no longer control your life. My reflection stared back from glass. Stronger, wiser, whole. And then a final thought settled quietly into my mind. The woman who smiled while breaking me lost the version of me that would have loved her forever. That man waited at cold dinner tables. That man accepted being ignored. That man kept sacrificing himself, hoping love would return. He's gone now. The city lights began appearing one by one across the skyline. I grabbed my jacket, turned toward the door, and this time I kept walking forward.